when I was working at Facebook, I joined as the person who was due to set up their European operations, really, ad operations, and then all of the user operations as well. So I was the first senior hire into the team there with the responsibility for expanding. Obviously built the team out in Europe, and then the second half of my time at Facebook, I went and worked out of the headquarters where I ran global user operations for a few years. So I was there for about 5 years in total. And now I work at an early stage startup, actually an Irish early stage startup called Tynes. It's a security automation company. Still really small. I kind of seem to love these early stage things. It's probably what I enjoy most is the building phase. So I did something similar at Google prior to Facebook, and then obviously back to it now. And I run sales and marketing. So all of the commercial side of the business is my responsibility. We're building out teams here in Ireland. Our headquarters is in Ireland, obviously, and then we're setting up a team in Boston as well to run the North America operations. So been there just shy of a year now. Facebook actually made the decision to come to Ireland fairly early on. I mean, I think the IDA were pretty engaged with them from the beginning. There was a guy called John Nugent who was at the time responsible for West Coast at IDA. So he had been having conversation with them when they were still relatively early stage. They were still on University Avenue in Palo Alto, so kind of small. And Sheryl Sandberg joined. So Sheryl Sandberg is the chief operating officer of Facebook. Prior to that, she was at Google, where she was responsible for all of the sort of online operations, all the scaled operations for advertising and revenue. But 60% of all of Google's business was under her. And obviously international was a key component of that. International is really important for Google. So she oversaw the international expansion and was involved in making the decision to choose Dublin for Google. So when she joined Facebook, kind of, I think it was early 2008, one of the first decisions that she was faced with was, how do we kind of build our international operations? What should that look like? And she didn't really hesitate in choosing Dublin because she had a great experience with Google before, knew about the talent pool in Dublin, knew about what it's like to do business there. And, you know, I think it was a very, very quick decision. From there, then starting to look for locations, and obviously Glandor was chosen from there. I think, again, a pretty straightforward conversation based on a variety of factors. Yeah, me joining then kind of shortly thereafter, I think, to, you know, sort of take it from those early beginnings and then try to scale it from there. The time it was 2009. The economy was, you know, was not where it was at pre-pandemic. I mean, it was uncertain times. I came into the job really not really knowing what our growth plans were. Typically, you know, we had to build out the business first, prove the business case, and then get investment to grow. Facebook was still raising money at the time, and to fuel that growth, because they weren't making any money. We didn't have an ads business at the time really to speak of. It was very, very early days. So I was coming into it not really knowing how many people I needed to hire, or what that growth was going to look like in the first year. So that's where the flexibility that Glandor offered us was really important, because I knew that if I only stayed at 6 people for the next 6 months, that was fine. That was going to work okay. But if I needed to expand, that I had some flexibility in taking additional space without too much fuss, really. It was all very, very kind of easy. So as we added people and took more and more space on that basement, I think we took over the entire basement, and at some point we were probably borrowing other people's meeting rooms illegally as well. But it was never any problem. I think that was the kind of funny thing, is we were always apologizing, and it's like, oh, I'm really sorry I took that meeting room and we're not paying for it. And Michael and Claire were always like, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, it's fine. And I think like that's an Irish thing on one side. I think it's just like there's never any too much fuss. But I think the flexibility that we had as we were growing, and I think by the time we left Leeson Street, there was probably about 25 of us. That was 25, 30 within 9 months. It was a lot of growth. But again, the guys accommodated us really well. And then when we moved down to Hanover Reach, down in the docks, we took half of a floor, not really thinking we were going to be growing very much. And before we knew it, I think with 6 months after that, or 6 to 9 months after that, we'd filled the entire building. But it was only because of that flexibility we had at Glandor that we were able to do it. I think another thing that was important for us was the city center location. When you're trying to attract talent, especially then, maybe it's changed a little bit now, but at the time it was really important to have a city center location. People we were hiring wanted to live in the city center, be able to walk to work, and be able to socialize afterwards in the area. And obviously the location in Leeson Street was absolutely perfect for that, for us. And that was a factor definitely in helping us to hire people, I'd say. I think initially that flexibility, I knew that at a moment's notice almost that if I needed additional space or there's all sorts of things at the beginning that you don't really know that you need as you're building a team, from hardware to IT setup and everything else. And like, we didn't have to worry about catering because obviously there was a really good restaurant in Glandor. So we kind of felt it was a little bit like, it's not very startup-y really in a way. When you looked at our headquarters back in California, they were much scrappier. It was bare bones, kind of industrial look. And there we were with like a nice office, nice location, fancy restaurant. But it all meant that there were things I didn't have to worry about, that the team were looked after, that they had what they needed. If we needed anything, it was there. Somebody would sort it out for us, which allowed me to focus on hiring and focus on the business. It was also nice to be able to, because again, we were really justifying our existence a little bit in the beginning. No one really knew what a European operation for Facebook was going to look like or what we were going to focus on. But allowing me to just free up my time and energy, not having to worry about facilities and just be able to focus on building the business, I think was a major factor initially. I think people also like coming to visit us. When you're remote from headquarters, a big part of it is just raising visibility on what you're doing and letting people see what you're doing, come meet the team. And everyone loved coming into that office, from HQ, and kind of felt sort of intimate. It felt really friendly, really welcoming. Some of our execs knew Pat, who was, just an amazing guy. He kind of did a bit of everything. He was just an incredible resource for us, an incredible kind of ambassador for the Glandor team back then. Just the welcome that everybody got, really blown away by it. Subtle things like that I think really helped me. I think one, make it a welcoming place for people to come and visit, and then also a welcoming place to work. So that really helped me a lot. And creating that early team, I think, was important as well. Like being able to hire really high caliber people to join you that early on when it was still a risky venture. Seems ridiculous to say now, looking at Facebook's success, but back then it wasn't a sure thing. Hire a really high caliber team. And then as we started to expand, having that foundation, I think, was really critical for us. So that's what laid the groundwork for everything that came after. The world of co-working, serviced office space has changed pretty dramatically, even in Ireland since we initially were setting up with Facebook. So you have your, everything from WeWork now to all these other places that people are familiar with. And there's a tendency sometimes, I think, just to go towards these kind of like, maybe turnkey kind of, well-known brands like that as you're coming in. I think the things that are less tangible that end up being really important are, again, these relationships that you build with people. It's more than just the office space. It's more than just the desks and whatever you kind of infrastructure you need. It's also, are you working with people who can help you see around corners a little bit? Again, if you're brand new and your office is brand new and your team is brand new, there's so many things that end up taking up a lot of time that are necessary, but not that productive. So again, things like, IT infrastructure or just getting things to work, being able to expand as you need to expand. You don't want that to be a big kind of negotiation every time. You want it to be straightforward. You want it to be supporting your business rather than kind of holding you back. Again, I didn't know the guys from Glandor before I set up in that office, but really got to know them, and they felt like an extension of our team in a lot of ways as we were growing. So my advice to companies is really do your due diligence. I think that's one of the most important decisions you're going to make as you're setting up, especially before you get your own office, is try to find something that's going to be flexible enough for you, help your team feel at home, make sure that it takes care of the kind of small details that end up becoming really important details, and will allow you to grow as you need to grow, being flexible enough to do that. Other things that people kind of maybe don't take into consideration are location. Kind of feel like city center. But again, it really matters where people commute to and from. Yeah, and working with a team that you feel is going to support you. I mean, again, I haven't had a lot of experience in working with different shared office spaces. We're going through it now, actually, with Tynes in the US, looking at different shared office spaces. And what you'll find a lot is, like, it's a pretty competitive market now. You'll find people are negotiating on rates and things like that, which is fine. It's great. It suits us as a business. But I think the thing I keep coming back to is, who's the team you're going to be working with? Are they just some faceless organization who are just there to react to your demands as you kind of need them, which is fine. I mean, it's a very transactional type model. Or can you work with something like the Glandor team, where it really feels like, they have the benefit of a lot of years, 20 years experience of helping companies that have gone through exactly what you're going through, know the challenges you're going to have, can help you kind of see around corners, and often preempt those issues for you, so you don't even know they're there, but it just works. So finding something like that really kind of takes a lot of stuff off your plate. You don't have to worry about it. You're going to be supported, and all those sort of foundations are in place for you. You don't have to worry too much about it. I think that would be my advice. It's a big decision. Really thinking carefully about that, and making sure that you're setting yourself for success. I think, like a lot of businesses, we're still figuring things out, still trying to decide what that future looks like. There's so many unknowns still. But I think one thing that's going on across the board is everyone is listening really carefully to what their employees want. I think people have had an opportunity to live differently, for better or worse. I think it's actually a lot of both, to be really honest. I think a lot of people, as they take a step back, yes, their lives have been turned upside down. It's been really difficult for lots of people. And going back into an office environment now is something that people are thinking really carefully about. What I'm hearing, and some of the decisions we're making ourselves right now, is that we're probably going to end up with some sort of hybrid model where people have the option to go back into an office if they want to do that. And actually, our team do want to do that. They do want the option to spend part of their work week face-to-face with colleagues, being able to collaborate in person. I think people definitely see the value in Zoom calls, for sure. Offers a lot of flexibility, but they really miss that in-person interaction. So we want to give them the ability to be able to do that. And what I'm hearing is a lot of companies are going to offer up the same thing. So that's one of the positives, I think, that's come out of the pandemic, is now the way that we work, the flexibility we offer people to kind of decide, whether they want to commute or not commute, or be in an office or not be in an office, I think is a tremendously positive thing that maybe would have happened at some point. Maybe some companies were already kind of going in that direction. Some of our customers were already doing that pre-pandemic, but it's definitely accelerated things. And I think that's a really positive thing.